Last week, Conan O'Brien was paid a visit by a notorious political figure who's been labeled a fascist. And no, we're not referring to Donald Trump, but rather someone who hates getting compared to Trump. Hitler, or rather comedian Sarah Silverman, dressed as Hitler. It's just the latest instance of Hitler turning up in a comedic context in pop culture. Rachel, what did you think of Silverman's routine there?
I think, doing a humor about Hitler is it's a high degree of difficulty to pull it off. I don't think a person can't go there, but I think if you're going to go to those kind of places, you have to be really on point. I didn't think it was that funny. Like, I didn't think it was that great. I thought she kind of, bombed in the. I thought it was sort of hammy and cartoony, as opposed to sharp and uncomfortable. And I think that the kind of comedy that works when you're going to those uncomfortable places is one that maybe implicates the comedian, the audience. I think that's where you get the kind of juicy comedy. I thought this was just a little kind of broad and whatever. It just didn't work for me.
Charles, what do you think of Hitler being used as a comedic character?
Well, I think I'm open to all kinds of avenues of humor coming at us. I have to agree with Rachel that, with the Sarah Silverman gig, it felt really light and it was missed. It wasn't very strong. Now, if we're talking about some other things that have been done around Hitler and that I found amusing, or even this new film that is somewhat new for us here in North America, you can get to some amazing things, and I think that you can hit on some points, but I do feel that I really would hate to see, come next Halloween, there's just a bunch of kids getting dressed up as Hitler because they just think it's humor.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this dangerous line, I think, always when we're dealing with, tyrants and figures, and when we're going with, serious people who have done some seriously, not so good things. I think we have to straddle that line and be careful, I think, in a way that it just has to be executed amazingly well.
Yeah.
It just has to be done amazingly
As
well.
Rachel was saying, you have to be on point,
Yes.
and perhaps you have to have a point.
A point of view is very important.
That you're trying to make. The movie you referenced, Charles, one of the biggest films out of Germany last year, called Look Who's Back. It's part of an upswing we've been seeing lately in terms of comedy around Hitler. There's the popular internet meme from the movie Downfall to include in that. Norm, why do you think this is all happening now?
Well, Trump obviously is a big part of it, but he's the symptom, not the disease. And it's not a disease, it's nostalgia. I think we've reached the point where a lot of people who were actually there for Hitler are gone. And it's easier, there's an abstraction, it's easier for people to disconnect and go, hey, you know what's funny? That little guy with the funny mustache. And they're thinking of Chaplin, but it ends up being Hitler. What's weird about the Sarah Silverman thing is, I think the context was great, that the idea that Hitler is kind of annoyed that Trump is stealing his bit. That's really funny. The execution didn't work, I think, because the audience just was really uncomfortable, and you can sort of feel the laughter catch a few times. You can hear it in the clip that we heard. But Silverman and O'Brien totally knew what they were doing. It's just that it didn't land. And I'm thinking of the way the show Man Seeking Woman used Bill Hader as an elderly wheelchair-bound Hitler dating Jay Baruchel's character's ex. And it's like, who would you leave him for? And she picked Hitler. And it's funny because Hader played it as really self-aware, really funny. Oh, Hitler's at the party. And it worked because the show's so absurd that it can sell it. But if you try to place it in a real context without any frame of surrealism or absurdity or satire, you're gonna end up with a dud. Because as was the point of the O'Brien bit, the Conan bit, sorry, I keep saying O'Brien. The point of the Conan bit is that Hitler isn't so ridiculous anymore because he's been outdone by an American media tyrant who's actually better at this than Hitler is. So, it's not funny. Anymore.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's interesting is because Sarah Silverman often does that kind of humor, that kind of fearless humor that makes you squirm and makes you uncomfortable. I just think it's a tough joke to land, and I also think that there's something that I think actually the power in maybe humor about Hitler or the extremes of what we're seeing the response to Trump is not the ridiculous man at the center of it, but actually the impulse in all these regular people who fall in line.
Yeah, it's the
right?
movement.
It's the movement itself, which I think is the thing that's more complicated and more fascinating to kind of poke at and prod at, and is more uncomfortable because, because the laughs around Hitler are often like he was a funny little man with a funny little mustache. So I think that becomes the easy way to poke fun, as opposed to getting at, and millions of ordinary Germans carried out his plot out of compliance, out of fear, out of whatever reason. So I think that's where I think the humor,
higher degree of difficulty in humor.
Exactly, of pulling that off.
Well, you think of every supervillain in every movie, Bond or otherwise, who says, people just want to be led, Mr. Bond. People need someone to look to. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's not as funny as it used to be.
Yeah.
And when the pendulum swings back, I think, like the Trump jokes are happening now because that's how society copes with him. But yeah, millions of people can't be wrong, right? Except that, of course, they terribly, terribly are.
Yeah.